Okay, so we're live. And welcome everybody to our Treat Me Tuesday. Merida is here. She's just down here in my lap hanging out. And thankfully, I do have my new internet cord, so we're all plugged up to the internet instead of depending upon Wi-Fi, which has been ever so not dependable for me the last couple of times we've done this. But we're joined by Billy with Answers. And I'm so excited you're here, Billy. I don't think it's any secret how much I love Answers and how much we are hopelessly devoted to Answers in our house. Merida loves her Answers and her Answers goat's milk. And so we talk a lot about Answers here. And I specifically wanted to focus on the treats today because I think that there's something that's overlooked and they have their unique purposes. So I think it's great to talk about those. But I would love it if you'd introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how you got involved in the pet industry to begin with, and then with Answers.
Yeah, well, those are one and the same. So I've only been involved with Answers for the last 10 years. I was in the pet food industry beforehand, which I think is nice because I've sort of just kind of seen it through that lens. The real interesting thing is, so I'm the nutrition science director for the company, but that's not what I started out as. I started out, as something totally different. I sort of worked my way up through the company over the last 10 years. But my bosses would tell you that I stalked the company in order for them to have me hired, because I didn't know this, but when I reached out to them to hire me, there was no job available. I said, hey, you're the only company I can work for, so you have to hire me. I mean, there's no other way around this. And I didn't know they'd only been a company 6 months. I didn't know that they couldn't pay me. I didn't know any of this. So, technically I was paid in dog food, but I basically worked for free for 2 years to get my foot in the door and work my way up. And it's been really nice for me because when it comes to like the science wing of Answers Pet Food, my two bosses, Jacqueline and Roxanne, we sort of have, for the last 10 years, have had like a hive mind of hey, let's put out, because as you know, we put out the weirdest products that work really well, right?
Yeah.
And so, we want to continue to do that. And so it's been a really cool, experience for me for the last 10 years to be able to work with a company that actually does put nutrition first in every case and not, cost or things like that.
Yeah, I met Jacqueline several years ago, probably now about 6 or 7 years ago, at a trade show, a distribution trade show, and listened to her give a seminar about goat's milk and the benefits of goat's milk, and I was just blown away. So it is amazing when you get involved in the nutrition aspect of it all and hear how it really corrects so many things, how amazing it is.
Yeah, well, and milk is, I know we're not talking, well, actually we are kind of talking about milk.
Absolutely.
It's the only ingredient in those treats, essentially, aside from whatever the additive is. But that's where we got our start, was introducing raw milk as a concept, nationally to dogs and cats. And so there is no food like raw cheese or raw milk, because it's just, it's the only food made by nature to be food, really. I mean, I guess you could consider eggs to be, in that realm as well. But so we really got our foot in the door in the industry by introducing this thing made by biology that's really unlike anything else.
Yeah, and I've heard you refer to eggs as chicken milk. I know.
Yes, dorkily. Yes, huge dork over here. But that is absolutely true. And we are one of the only raw food companies that include whole eggs in our food still. And it's because eggs are just one of those really amazing biodiverse foods as well.
Yeah, but all my dogs have done really great on it. And when I met Jacqueline at the time, I had an almost 16-year-old dachshund who was in kidney failure. And so I do think kind of getting her involved in the goat's milk and all of the good nutrition helped extend my time with her a little bit longer. But I know I had another dachshund at the time who was suffering from really bad allergies, and limiting her to just goat's milk for a few weeks to help kind of rid her body helped tremendously as well. And gave her quality of life.
Focus on quality, hope for quantity. That's what we do with our dogs and cats.
Yeah, and I know you have a beloved little pug named Luna.
Lua, yes. She is. It's one of the first. I have the window open, and it's one of the first hot days here. So she's on my cement floor, laying on her side right next to me right now. So I'd bring her on, but I wouldn't want to,
disturb her day.
Yeah, she would be very mad at me. So.
Well, tell us a little bit about, I think let's start talking about the cheese bites first. So you have goat's milk cheese bites, and then you have kefir cheese bites or cow cheese bites as well. And so let's talk about them separately, and about kind of go into the goat's milk cheese first, maybe, because those were your first ones out.
Yeah, so we have 5 varieties of raw goat cheese. So each of them has, a healthy additive, like either blueberry, cranberry, or turmeric, or something like that. So the whole concept of this was born out of the fact that when we made a treat, we were not going to make a treat that was freeze dried or dehydrated, because there is a market, of course, for those things. And there's whole discussions about how many nutrients are, left available, all that kind of stuff. However, we don't consider those things to be raw food, because we think raw food has its innate moisture. So we didn't want to do a treat. Most of the time you start out as a raw food company and then you say, we want to make treats. Well, we have to do freeze dried or dehydrated. But we didn't want to do that. We like innate moisture. And so we said, okay, let's do cheese. People won't mind, getting this frozen and putting it in their refrigerator and keeping it there. And so, this, like many things, was born around a kitchen table at Jacqueline's farmhouse, in terms of our, our fancy meetings. And it is just the best cheese in the world in terms of nutritional quality. So it's all made by David Esch at Lycans Valley Creamery here in Pennsylvania. I'll be there tomorrow, actually. And he also makes raw cheese for human consumption as well. He sells to a lot, some local restaurants, and he makes just wonderful cheese. But in this case, so all the cheese he makes, so it's the same goat milk that we get in terms of the quality, milk that we're getting that you would just have for your animal. Sure. So when he makes the cheese, he only actually warms that to 98 degrees. And so this is 100% a raw product. So, but it's fermented at 98 degrees. So it's actually a higher temperature ferment. So our kefir and our cheese are our highest fermented products, really, by my estimation. And so that's where you get that 1 billion probiotics, per ounce just in those cheese treats. And that's, the same 200 species that are in raw milk just generally. And so both of the treats are made in that same way. It's just a different style of that. But with the goat, we started with the goat because that's what people sort of were used to. But both offer different benefits, because they're from different animals.
And so your cow cheese treats have the ingredients in order that if you rotate them, that they will help repel fleas, ticks, and I would assume mosquitoes as well, based upon
I mean, basically, we look through the OP, which is the official publication from AAFCO, and but a lot of people don't realize, and I think it's important to mention, is that you can't just do anything you want, even if it's healthy, in the pet food industry. So we would have. I had an idea. Hey, what if we do a bee pollen one? That'd be so cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah, agreed. Bee pollen is not approved by AAFCO. So if you see bee pollen on a list and you're somewhere else, most states are AAFCO states. That company's just getting away with it. That's not a legal ingredient in that state. And so we open the book and we say, okay, we have to open to the spices and herbs section, and we have to look at what we can use. And so we found 3 different herbs. We have cumin, turmeric and black pepper, and garlic. And we found 3 different herbs that we could say are traditionally used for repelling pests, especially in cumin in cats. It has the same effect of making their skin, less desirable. So you can either rotate through them. If you want to use one, probably the garlic is, I would say, the way to go. Or you could buy them all and then just whenever you feed a treat, be it if you have a small or a large dog, just rotate between the 3 or however you want to do it. Now, how well that works is dependent somewhat on the area you live in. So when I lived in so to give you an idea, my dog has lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Seattle, Washington, Los Angeles, California, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've never had to do anything for her for flea and tick, just because it's not really a huge issue for her, at least for her specifically. When I was in California, it was like a nightmare. So fleas are native. They're always there. So if you were in Southern California, you would have to use this in correlation with some other natural products or something like that. So it really just depends. But also, at the very least, it's just, a healthy treat to feed.
Yeah, and we've had very good luck. One of the things you may want to talk about is packaging.
Yeah. I brought actually a visual for you. It's show and tell. So I brought this visual. So so the packaging, there's no plastic involved whatsoever. That's the greatest part about it. So they're in a wax paper bag. We did make that change to the packaging about maybe a year ago or more, which I think holds in much more of the moisture, which is really great. So it just depends on how you want to do it. You can keep it in the box once you thaw it. So how do I thaw it? I just put it on my counter for a few hours until it becomes thawed. And I am a little bit more anal when it comes to storing food. So what I do is my dog is small, and I cut them into about 4 or 5 pieces each, and I put them in a glass jar and keep it in my refrigerator. So this is literally, it's a good thing she's sleeping right now, or she would be maybe whining and staring at me. But so that's how I do it. Or you can keep it in the box, but for my money, this will keep it moister for longer, which I like to be able to do that. This is obviously the turmeric, by the way. This is the turmeric goat. So the cool thing about that packaging is not only is less plastic going into the environment, because we know that 90% of all plastic that's been created was not recycled. So it's either in a landfill or in the ocean being eaten by, animal life. And also it doesn't go into your pet. So we also know that freezing things, we even know now that just storing things in plastic, that some of that plastic actually migrates it into the food. Now, while we can't avoid this 100%, we can avoid it 100% in these treats, which is really great. So you don't have to worry about any plastic contamination. And I think the other thing to mention, which is very important, is the Esch family who makes them are incredible people. He has an incredible farm there. He actually raised a pig for me and my wife last year, and he's doing the same this year. I think I'll see the pigs tomorrow. But one of the cool things about that was before David met us, he actually had to have a side job as a construction worker. And now he doesn't. He's a full-time farmer and cheesemaker, and that was his dream. That's what he wanted. And so when you buy these cheese treats, you're supporting, David and his family, and they all get in on the process. Some of the kids work, to fold the boxes, and that's their summer job and that kind of stuff. And so it's just a really cool relationship that we can have. And, if anyone's ever up in Lycans, Pennsylvania, you can literally drive up and go to his store. And the other cool thing about his store is it's an honor system store. So you walk in, a lot of times there's no one there, and there's just a box with money in it. You write down what you took, and then you make your own change and leave.
Oh, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'd like to know about our vendor or that have such personal relationships with their supply.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that really sets us apart. We have farmers that raise stuff specifically for us. We start new farms. As far as I know, we're the only pet food company actually actively starting new farms. And I think my favorite example of that is Alan, who does our duck eggs in our food, was not a duck egg farmer. And it was great because he didn't have any preconceptions about what they should be indoors. They should be all this stuff. So he just said, I'm looking for a hard day's work. It's actually, I believe it's either the brother or the cousin of someone who worked at our plant. And so they said, do you have anything for them? And so we can say, here's how we want these animals to be raised. And now he has, our meat ducks and 4,200 egg layers out there that are, raised to the standard that we want to be raised. So it's a really cool connection for us.
That is. Now, speaking of other treats, chicken feet and pig feet are recent to your lineup. Fermented, of course, because it wouldn't be Answers if it wasn't fermented. But talk a little bit about these, because they're a little bit awkward to feed, especially the pig feet at first. And so talk about the benefits of them. And I know that we have several staff here who give them to their dogs. I have not yet ventured to give them to my dogs because I have 8, and I feel like it might be a little bit of a free-for-all if I gave them these treats. But I know several do here, and their dogs just love them. So talk about the benefits of both of those.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm like the one person in the industry who has one dog. Like everyone I meet, like I has at least 2 or 3, and I'm always like, I've just had the one for, going on 14 years.
Yeah.
So, uh, so yeah, it was interesting because one of the main drivers for me behind this product was the fact that you still have about, by my estimation, about 50% of dogs, even on a raw diet, are still developing plaque and tartar. And a lot of that has to do with genetics. And a lot of that has to do with the treats you're giving, a lot of different aspects of it. So they still needed to either, have their teeth brushed or chew on bones or, things like that. And some animals, take my dog, for example, they're brachiocephalic dogs. It's a mess inside their mouth, right? Because of how we've, bred them down. They have as many teeth as a German Shepherd. It's just in this little tiny space. And so, we wanted to put something together that was going to be great for dental health. And the one thing that really works well for not having to brush your dog's teeth is crushing bones. And what happens is that actually scales the plaque off of the tooth itself. So we wanted to be able to provide a, hang on one second. I just want to make sure can you give me 1 second? This is embarrassing, but I have to plug my computer in. So I just don't want to lose you. So talk amongst yourself for 1 second.
No, I totally understand. I have had so many technical difficulties since we've gone virtual. So we'll give Billy a second. I see many of you guys are on here. Hello to Laura and Melissa and David and Christine and Brenna. I see lots of you guys on here. I hope you guys are enjoying this time with Billy. I'm so excited to be able to bring you this time. I've spoken to Billy at many trade shows, so it's great to be able to share him with you guys.
That was pretty quick, but I will say, you'd be surprised. I do a lot of interviews, and that still happens to me.
Well, it makes me feel better because last week I was having so many technical difficulties, and it was going in and out on me. And I always feel so much better when I watch you or Dr. Becker or somebody or Candace with Pet Boss, and they lose internet or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, exactly. So, so going back to what I was saying, I was able to avoid my dog and not freak her out by running around her. So I did achieve that as well. So, so with the pig's feet and the chicken feet, so what we wanted to do was the bone had to be consumable. So you want them to break that up and actually, consume the entire thing. Now that'll look different if you're using a pig's foot for a small dog, let's say, right? Because that might be a gradual chew for 3 or 4 days or whatever it might be. So basically the long short of it with how we make them is we take obviously our quality meat. So we're using gap rated meat. We're the first people to do that in the pet food industry about 10, at the inception of the company. And we're taking our gap rated pigs and our chicken feet, and we're soaking those in kombucha for 24 hours before to sort of initiate that fermentation, if you will, or to coat those with that good bacteria. And another cool thing about that is John, who works at our plant, it's actually his wife that does the kombucha, and they do that at their farm. It's a huge tank, full of scobies all over the top of it. It's kind of a cool setup there. And so what that does is it not only gives the dog the ability to crush that bone and clean their teeth, but it also gives what happens is all of that. So kombucha produces good bacteria and healthy yeast, sort of similarly to kefir, for example. Mm-hmm. So it also, you get all of that good bacteria being pushed into the gums and getting a better healthy mouth environment. So with that product, I would highly recommend the first time you do it, hold on to one end of it so they know they have to chew it, so they don't just swallow it, because a lot of dogs have never had that before and they might just, and the chicken feet, a lot of cats love to chew through those as well. So I recommend holding it first. I mean, not with a cat, because a cat's not just going to, gulp it down anyway, probably. But yeah, with a dog, I'd recommend holding it. And they usually acclimate to it pretty quickly. Same thing with the pig feet. Now, again, if you have a small dog, my dog's 15 pounds, she couldn't eat that in one, she would have to chew through it, and that's totally fine. With the chicken foot and a small dog, you're still going to find it's gone fairly quickly. but you still want to consider it is totally raw. It is not going to be, dehydrated in any way. And so you do want to feed it either in the kitchen or in a crate. I have it in my living room. I have, when I've fed Bones to Lua in the past, I have a crate there, and she's small enough to where I can just put it in. I don't even have to close the door, and she just chews on it in there. That's great. Or you could do it outside now that it's getting nicer. And with the pig foot, with a large dog, they're going to get through it still fairly quickly. And you can feed it frozen or thawed.
Okay, yeah. And if you are using it with a small dog, your recommendation would put it back in the refrigerator. Once you have it and they're done a little bit.
You don't have to. Since they are fermented, I mean, I would leave it out for even 2 or 3 days. I mean, I will say if you leave it out for any longer than that, it's going to start to smell. I'm not saying it's dangerous at that point, but there were times when my wife was like, okay, that's kind of, not what I want in my living room.
Extra fermented.
Yeah. So, I mean, but at least a day or two is going to be totally fine, and you're not necessarily going to notice, a difference in that. And so, it's a great way to, in terms of even beyond the health benefits of the dental part of it, it's a great way to get collagen into their system. It's a great way to get protein and fat and, all that bacteria for their microbiome and their gut. And so the really cool thing is, we offer fermented bone broth and feet. And so we offer different ways that work for different dogs and cats in terms of getting that collagen, that glucosamine, that chondroitin. So you can either do it through the broths where we kind of extract that out, or you can go straight to the source. And I can't tell you anything about it, but I will say we got some really cool stuff coming up too, that I think everyone watching will be very excited about.
Well, I know we did just bring in the duck, so we do have the duck formulation. I haven't tried that yet. I usually rotate between all the proteins and do all of the different proteins. But one of the things now, duck eggs are now in all of the formulations. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
You'll transition to duck completely. But I know that we have a huge following for Answers, and I will tell everybody, if you're watching this and you're hanging out there and have any questions for Billy, you can go ahead and put those in, and I'm kind of watching the comments. I can let you know any questions that may come through. But one of the things you did touch on is the meat sourcing and the GAP meat sourcing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so GAP is the Global Animal Partnership, and they independently audit farms for how free range the animal was and how they were, what they were fed. And so anyone who's on the GAP scale is going to be better than, for instance, if you bought it like a conventional grocery store. Whenever people say, like, is your food human grade, I always like to say human grade's not good enough for what we're doing. Like, in order to buy the quality of product that would go into our products, you'd have to go to, like, a hippy dippy co-op somewhere, or an organic grocery store or something like that, because we're interested in the best possible thing. So a good example of that would be our beef is 100% grass fed and grass finished, and that grass finished and fed means they were actually on pasture, because you can get away with not doing that now. And so that is sorry, my phone rang and I had to ADD. So here's to when you think you have it silenced, going back to the other thing as well. So our beef is 100% grass-fed and finished. Most of it is certified organic, and the rest of it is organically raised. This is the best beef you could buy in the world. I mean, we even have some farms that are GAP 5 farms, which you just won't find in a grocery store, because they're that infrequent, and the quality there. But GAP 4, which is all of our other beef as well, is just something like, if you were to go to, like, let's say Whole Foods and buy their grass-fed organic beef, this would be the same or better quality. And that goes through all of our sourcing up into, we raise 25% of our birds in all of our formulas. So chicken, duck, and turkey, and all of those are organic, all of those are pastured, and all of those are actually slaughtered on site at the farm. And it's one of the cool things we offer that most people don't know is we offer the first 25. The reason why we cut that off at 25% is because the first ingredient is 25% whole bird. So if it's the duck formula, it's whole ducks with their heads and their feet. Imagine like a duck at the grocery store, but with its head and feet, or a chicken or something like that. So you're getting, I mean, it sounds like non-appetizing to humans, but you're getting the brain and the eyes and all these things that we want in the diet. And also the last thing I'll mention on that too is with our birds specifically, all USDA meat is washed in parasitic acid and chlorine and a lot of chemicals you don't want on your meat. And our birds are not. So our birds are only washed in our raw way, and they're really the only non-chemically washed birds in the country, and they only go into Answers Pet Food.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you can go into the way fermentation is a form of pasteurization in a way to make it safe.
Yeah, I mean, I would stay away from the word pasteurization, just because that implies that you're changing it. So it's what it is it's an inhibition step as opposed to a kill step. Mm-hmm. So high pressure pasteurization or heat, these are kill steps, which means you're going to be trying to kill off the pathogenic bacteria. But unfortunately, when you do that, there's a whole bunch of other consequences, with fat and protein, and not even being in a raw food state, obviously with heating, but also with high pressure pasteurized foods. Now, with fermentation, we're trying to inhibit the growth of that bacteria. So it's essentially lost my train of thought. Okay, cool. It's essentially we know that bacteria is going to be present in your dog's environment, right? Like you have salmonella in your kitchen, you have it in your store, it's ubiquitous. But in the food itself, we want to inhibit the growth of it because there are naturally occurring amounts of bacteria just generally. And so if you want to feed a raw food diet, this is not only going to inhibit them from growing, but the really cool thing is we have the data to show that as the food sits, it becomes statistically safer because it fills up with so much good bacteria. So when we did our mishandling part of our study and left the food out for 48 hours at room temperature, it was statistically the safest. Even safer than being in the refrigerator, which is more safe than any other pet food company. So fermentation is really cool. It's just not that easy to do like we do it, because it's not like I think a misconception is, oh, you just add probiotics to food and then it ferments it. But it's not. Fermentation is the growth. And in order to get that growth in products that are very, very low sugar, you have to have very virulent good bacteria that are already in food environments. And I think we're particularly suited to do that well.
Here are some questions for you. Melissa Wilkerson asked if you're ever going to offer a variety bulk box.
That is a good question. We do also have some, well, one thing is, and again, I can never mention, what these things are, but I think something, I think that something will happen relatively soon that people will be excited about. But with that specific question, we have thought about that and how to do that. There's no timeline for it. I can't guarantee if it's ever going to happen for sure. One of the problems with that is one of our safety procedures for our food generally is at our plant, if we're doing chicken, that's all we do that day. So we're going to do chicken cat, let's say chicken patties, chicken bulk or whatever. But if we only bring in chicken, we totally mitigate the risk of there being a cross contamination between those two things, right?
I can understand.
And so that is one hiccup to it, but not to say that we have gotten that request and it's possible is the best answer I can give.
Let's see. David Crawford said that he has accidentally left raw goat's milk out more than 12 hours to thaw. What is an acceptable time limit for thawing frozen goat's milk?
You could do much longer than that. A lot of times when I thaw the milk out for my dog, I will put it on the counter until it becomes liquid and then leave it for another 24 hours on the counter just to get that fermentation. And the really cool thing is I always tell people to not just believe so we can test our products and tell you how many bacteria are in it. But the awesome thing is if you do that experiment yourself at home and you can actually physically see the bacteria. So if you take a pint and leave it out and thaw it out on your counter, and then once it becomes liquid, leave it for another 24 hours and don't open it, you'll start to see it becomes really hard. And what that is all those bacteria are breathing and they're producing carbon dioxide. And so you'll start to actually physically see that there's bacteria alive, unlike, like a probiotic supplement or something.
I know I've left mine out before defrosting, and definitely have left it out for over 24 hours before, from the time it's frozen block to the time I put it in the fridge. And my dogs have loved it just as much.
Or even more, maybe.
That's right.
At that point, yeah.
Laura Gonzo was asking, and I know that this is a little bit difficult and we can touch on this, but she was asking about if there would be a mid-range size on the goat's milk. So like a quart size in between the pint and the half gallon. But I know in the state of North Carolina, we make things difficult when it comes to milk, raw milk.
You have that ridiculously huge label on the side. Every time I get one of those from the plant, I'm always like, this is so ridiculous. Yeah, there you go. Just so you know, North Carolina people, that is not on any other milk anywhere. So different states have different regulations. So that's a great suggestion. Unfortunately, it is available literally everywhere else in the country. We do have the quart. Not to say that that isn't, you know, that's a good suggestion to also have it in North Carolina, but we just don't currently. So sorry about that. But the cool thing is, even if you are getting the half gallon, don't get stuck on that 14 days. It's good for 30 days. And remember, the longer it sits, the healthier it's going to become in the fridge. So what I would recommend doing in that case is thaw it out and just keep it in your fridge for 30 days, and it will be healthier on the 30th day than it was on the first.
Yeah, I don't have the luxury of it taking me 30 days to go through a half gallon. A half gallon in about 2.5 days. So, well, maybe more like 3 or 4, but I'd go through it quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Home today because I need some more. Let's see if there's anybody else who said anything else. I'm excited to hear the new things you guys have coming out. Do you think that they'll be out by summer? Do you guys have any kind of framework on when you'll be introducing new items?
I don't want to incriminate myself here. No, but you know, it is fun to just kind of tell people, like, just so you know that, you know, it used to be, you probably remember this. It used to be like, you know, 3 years between new products with Answers Pet Food, just because we are a self-funded company. We don't take on investors, so we have to fund all of these new, you know, it's not a easy thing to make a new product and buy all the raw materials and get it, you know, out the door or whatever. Mm-hmm. But so one of the more exciting things for me over the past few years has been, you know, we've been putting out a lot more new products. And so I would say, you could say sooner rather than later. But that's as much as I can give you.
That's very exciting. I know the background, and I mean, you're far more in all the manufacturing portion of this, obviously, than I am, but I know that on the surface level, putting out pet food seems so much easier, but you had touched on all of the different AAFCO regulations and all the certifications, and you know, we'll have a customer will come in and say, I want the most organic and humanely raised food that you can have, you know, that I can feed my pet. You know, why doesn't it say organic? Why doesn't it say this? And that labeling and all of those different regulations are tremendous. I mean, and I realized more when I sat and talked to you after one of the seminars we were in, and you were talking about having been to an AAFCO meeting. It's very interesting.
Well, it's very depressing.
Yeah.
And you know, it remains to be seen if the AAFCO meeting is scheduled in August in Baltimore. So we are actually probably, I think, the only small company that goes to every AAFCO meeting. And, you know, when it comes to a lot of the certifications, those are great for being able to, you know, get that third-party audit. But I would say also, too, they're not exactly the end-all, be-all of that, right? So, you know, we have organic certification for certain, you know, types of our farm, certain things like that. But here's another crazy thing that we, let me just show you how, like, sort of bureaucracy works in terms of doing that. So our chicken product, right, is, we use 100% certified organic chicken, right? We use 100% certified organic duck eggs. Basically everything in it is organic, right? But our plant is not certified organic. So we can't put certified, or we can put, in the ingredient panel, organic chicken, we can do this, but we can't physically then put the USDA certified because our plant is not certified. And these are not things that are cost, are very cheap to do.
Right.
And so we always go within that. So I understand that we try to do as much of that as we can on the consumer end, but it's more important to me that the farmer is using, is doing those things regardless of if they're certified or not.
No, it is. It's such a process and so much expense involved. So I can certainly appreciate that. Well, are there any other things? I don't think we have any more questions. I'll give everybody another little bit to answer any questions. But do you have anything else you want to share?
Just as usual, well, one, thank you to you. We, our retailers are who built us, and we're going to continue to focus on you guys in terms of how do we get people in the store, especially now, given, everything that's happened in the just retail space generally in the country. But it's, in pet retail, I think a lot of people assumed that because pet stores were open, nothing really changed. But obviously there's a lot of pet stores that had to change everything, and people were still struggling. So this is the best time to support your local pet store. This is the best time to not only go in and get your answers, but get treats and get your new dog bed and your leashes and all the stuff that keep these stores thriving. So just one, support your local retailer, and number two, thank you so much to everyone who's watching this for using our products, because, we love what we do and we will continue to do that, but none of it works if we don't have people who are feeding it to their dogs, and we don't have retailers who are selling it and all that kind of stuff. So we genuinely, being such a small company, appreciate everything people are doing for us.
Yeah, and we were lucky that right before kind of everything took a nosedive, literally at Global, part of what I was doing behind the scenes when I was at the Global Trade Show was working a little bit on our catalog to go on our website. And so we now
cool.
we work with e-tail and have online ordering available. And so we're doing free local delivery within 10 miles of each one of our locations. And so Answers is, of course, on there. And we've had plenty of people ordering our Answers. So, of course, it's available online. You can order 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're delivering 7 days a week. As long as orders are placed by 1 p.m., we'll deliver fresh to the doorstep, including frozen.
Oh, so that's great. Absolutely.
We've been very lucky that we got that up and going right before all of this started. But we've been lucky in the midst of all this to be able to remain open and be here for people and their pets. It's one of the things we've included as a blessing to be able to be here for our customers. We've got a couple more questions, I think. Let's see.
Sure.
Diane says she has a senior cat with allergies, so she's trying she's being treated with steroids. So if you have any suggestions maybe for Diane's cat, it sounded like she has some food allergies.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if it's a food allergy or just, if it's a food allergy, I would recommend just finding a food that the cat can eat without having to, take medication, presumably. You could either, on our end, you could do one of two things. You could either have it be, try our detailed formula, because there's going to be less food allergies because the fermentation actually kind of changes the protein structure slightly. That would probably be the easiest thing to do. Or we do have if you reach out to us at info@answerspetfood.com, we do have a cat health guide, and we do have an allergy protocol. That would be another good way to go on that as well. Even just using the straight formula in one of our milks would reduce the amount of, ingredients there. And the other thing to think of too with people watching this is when you do an allergy test, there is no allergy test that's sufficient for raw milk. So if it says if your allergy test says they can't have milk, that does not pertain to raw milk at all. I haven't really run into any animals that are actually allergic to, especially fermented raw milk. It's possible, of course, but just FYI, that if you get a test back like that, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be using fermented raw dairy.
And I had asked this question actually during one of your online lives that you had done that Melissa Wilkerson had brought to our attention, but about turmeric and black pepper being in the goat milk treat for turmeric, and wondering if you were going to add pepper to that goat milk treat. Oh,
yeah. So that was kind of when we made that for on the the cow cheese treat side, we kind of made that improvement. And, you know, it's just kind of based on, well, one of the things that's really great about those treats is that turmeric, you know, is also fat soluble in terms of its ability to work. And so you do get those awesome, all that wonderful fat, medium chain fatty acids from the goat's milk cheese itself. But yeah, I would suspect at some point we're going to look into that. I think it's just kind of fallen back in kind of other stuff we're doing, because at any given time we're doing, you know, a million things. And so, but that is a great suggestion. And maybe I'm going to be up at the plant and doing some meetings this week, so maybe I can bring that up.
Add it to your list.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you being here. I think, oh wait, one more question. Just talking about goat's milk being a universal milk, good for bottle feeding puppies and kittens.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about milk. It's pretty much all universal. The idea that cow's milk is somewhat less better for babies because it's for a baby cow, but goat's milk is universal somehow, just really isn't true. If you actually look at just raw milk generally, so it could be camel milk, it could be dog and cat milk, could be human breast milk, they're all not that far apart. They obviously have different nutritional profiles, right? Because they're different species, but they're not all, they're pretty similar. The protein, the fat levels are going to vary and stuff. So I would say that, you know, our kefir is as universal as, you know, our fermented raw goat's milk. Now, with that being said, we do have more experience because the goat's milk has been around longer for people being, for puppies and kittens who would be on formula just being raised off of that. So I would recommend the goat's milk just because we have more data on that, I think. But no, I mean, formula is what we're essentially, we're trying to create milk when we make formula, and we're just not even close. I mean, milk is, you know, over 5,000 nutrients. I mean, it's such a biodiverse food that we don't even totally understand it. And so we've had a ton of success with both kittens and puppies being raised on our goat's milk.
I know that when we have calls about looking for something to raise, bottled kittens especially, but puppies as well, we always direct them to goat's milk. But mostly just because here it comes in half gallon, it's a little bit easier as far as having more of it all at once.
Yeah.
I wonder how much you would feed. I mean, would you feed more of the goat's milk versus the kefir?
You would just, in either case, you just have to look at the calorie content. And there's a lot of good reference sites for how much you should be feeding, you know, kittens and puppies that are only on milk. You just have to look, and the goat's milk is 20 calories an ounce and the kefir is 30 calories an ounce. So you just have to look at what is the amount of calories you're wanting to be feeding, what is the recommended amount of times to feed those calories, and then just divide that number by 20 or 30.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I've been so excited to have you on. I am always fascinated when I hear you or Jacqueline talk, and always love learning so much about the Answers line. And so we've been very lucky to have you here and have you with us for a few minutes. I know you're a busy guy, and we really appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks to everyone who was listening. So
yeah, well, our love to everybody at Answers, and I hope we'll see you soon at a trade show sometime later this year. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I'm you know, this has affected us all in different ways, and as you know, I typically travel a lot, so that's been a change for me. And there's good and bad things about that, but it does make you miss the human in-person interaction. So I'm right there with you. I'm hoping a little bit later in the year. So.
Yeah, I definitely miss seeing everybody in face-to-face conversations and times together, because it's definitely something that can't be replaced.
Exactly right.
Well, our love to everybody there, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Billy.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
You too.